Hello, ladies. Happy Wednesday. How are we all going? Are we there? I'll give it a few minutes. Hey, here we are. First one, Ronnie. How you doing, darling? Hey, Michelle. Here we go. We've got a good one today. Gonna absolutely love it. Hey, darling. All right, we'll give it a few minutes. Yeah? All right. Hey, Amy. I got your text too this morning, by the way, girl. So I'll be replying to it after this. Just so you know. Hey. All right. Okay, so I'm going to get started anyway, and then anyone else who jumps on. And, got a lot of feedback last week on the video that we did, or the video that I did, and lots of positive feedback. It was like the penny dropped, and there was a lot of aha moments for everyone in relation to what we're trying to establish here in the Mind Body Breakthrough program in stage 3, which is really about just optimizing your body in terms of, the nutritional and hormonal side of things. And that can actually take a little bit of time. There's a process around that. Some people it can happen quite quickly. Other people it can take a little bit more time. And there's just so many variables around it. Okay. Honestly, age is a factor. The amount of times that you've screwed up with your body by dieting or not dieting, any pre-existing health conditions, just your genetic DNA profiling, that all plays a part into it as well, and your lifestyle situation as well, Hey, Em. So last week we talked all about how we're trying to get your body optimized so that it can assimilate the most amount of food with the least amount of training, so that in the other 23 hours a day when you're not training, not exercising, not moving, your body's fired up on all cylinders. Okay, so rather than it being like a V4, I don't even think there's a thing as a V4, like a 4-cylinder car, it's operating as a V8 or a turbo. Okay, outside of our training time. Now, interestingly enough, that will only ever work if we treat relaxation and restoration as a part of that process, not the opposite of that process. Have you ever heard the saying, failure is a part of success, not the opposite of success? Not a V, team. Well, the same goes with, hey, Daya, the same goes with training and restoration. They're not opposites, they're a part of, and they're just as important. So let's say, for example, we've got all your nutrition right. Your body's optimized, your body's like, okay, so if we're looking at the grand scope of things right here, okay, so we've got relaxation and restoration. Hope you can see that. I'm just going to move it across. So you've got relaxation, restoration up here, and down here you've got no R and R. Okay, so you've got relaxation, restoration, no R and R. And, you're on the journey of stripping body fat, building muscle, squatting 100 kilos, doing a PB or your performance goal, whatever it might be. And there is a protocol, there is a training that your coach, that I have put in place for you. And that training is, let's say, 4 days of active training. 4 days of active training for your specific goal. Okay, so it might be weight training, could be cardio, could be powerlifting, whatever it might be. So this is what we call active training or sympathetic. There's two parts to our central nervous system. So we have our CNS, which is central nervous system, and then that breaks up into two. So if I can do this here, we have CNS, and then we break that up into parasympathetic, so PS, and sympathetic. Sympathetic is the doer, okay? Sympathetic likes to do. And the parasympathetic likes to rest, recover, restore, repair, all the R's, okay? So relaxation and restoration. Can you imagine what would happen to your car if you never serviced it? Never. Your motorbike, Tam, for example. Never serviced it. Never washed it. And you'd be doing 500-600 Ks a day in that car. What would eventually happen as a result of you being in sympathetic with your car? Eventually, that car is going to break down. You're going to go, you know what, everyone? F you. I'm going to stop working. Yeah, Tam, you would never not service or wash your car. Well, the same happens with our bodies. A lot of the women that I've worked with come to me, not in this place up here, which is relaxation and restoration. In fact, in the 23 years I've been doing this, I would say 2% have come to me and they've been in that relaxation and restoration, like really made self-care a priority, okay? Most of them have been down this end or highly sympathetic. That means when I say, okay, so what do you do to relax? And it's like, oh, I clean the house. I'm like, okay, so you clean the house. What else do you do? I go for a jog. I go do some shopping. Okay, all of that stuff there is actually activating your sympathetic nervous system. So when you're in the doing as opposed to the being is just existing in stillness, your body is oxidating stress. Okay, so you're actually stimulating your adrenals. And your adrenals, if you can think they're like a little thing like that, and they sit on top of the kidneys. Like that. And then you have your liver down the bottom there. And these little babies up here, CNA. So you've got cortisol and adrenaline. Those little babies up there, every time the sympathetic nervous system is activated through doing, through being active in all areas of life, right? The more of this that gets released. Now, anyone that's worked with me for a long time, and most of you ladies have, understand that if we have lots of adrenaline and cortisol pumping through your kidneys, filtering through your liver. Liver's the fat burning zone, okay? So liver is where you break down all your fat. If your liver's not optimized because you've got all these toxins up here and you're in sympathetic, what's going to happen here? You're not going to break down the fat, right? Good. So if you're not breaking down the fat, you've got cortisol stress running through your body, you're now highly sympathetic, you're on that vicious circle. Now, what starts to happen to the body when it's in sympathetic stress for too long? That means chronic stress for too long. You might have the perfect eating plan, the most amazing training program, because I'm pretty good at programming, right? But then when I program my restoration for you ladies, how many of you actually do the restoration with the same intensity, with the same focus, with the same emotional commitment as what you do to your training or your food or both? In most cases, reality, and I've done a lot of check-ins in my time with you ladies, it's pretty much not a priority. It's like, I'll fit that in if I have time, rather than making it a priority. Now, this is what happens. When our body taps out, like we have this level of a benchmark of stress that we can cope with. Once we start, and everyone's different depending on, how they've been able to manage stress throughout their lives. When we go over that threshold, what happens is we run out of cortisol. So our body's been running on stress hormone, cortisol. Yeah, it's kind of like running on a really cheap, crappy petrol, like ethanol or something like that, as opposed to like the Gucci petrol, right? What ends up happening is the body converts to adrenaline. Now, adrenaline is like cortisol on steroids. So it's twice as toxic. So now you've got cortisol, you're depleted through cortisol, and your adrenals also produce serotonin and dopamine, okay, which are the feel-good hormones. Well, that's not happening in there because they're completely depleted, okay, because your body's so sympathetic, it hasn't had a chance to repair. And now we've used the last energy source that we possibly can, even though it is a toxin to the body, even though it's a catabolic hormone, okay, which means it breaks down. And when it breaks down, it doesn't just break down, fat. It breaks down muscle density. It breaks down muscle, bone density. It breaks down your organs. So if your organs aren't, fully there, if you know what I mean, in that full form, your body's not going to be able to process as efficiently. There's going to be a degeneration and a deregulation in every single organelle in your body. So if your organs can't do the jobs that it needs to do because it's in this survival mode, it's in this vicious cycle, and it's got no time to repair or recover. And in your mind, you're going, I've just got to keep sticking to my training and I've just got to keep sticking to my food. The first thing is, hey, Michelle, that you need to make sure that all the systems are running the way that they need to. And the only time your body can run, and you can make the best benefits you can out of your training and get the results that you want, like performance-wise, composition-wise, or whatever it might be, is when your body's in parasympathetic. So you've got all this happening right now. No more depleted through cortisol. We're running on adrenaline. The liver's not processing fats properly because it's having to process all these toxins that are going through the body. Lactic acid, build-up of waste product in the body, every function in the body is deregulated. Okay? So all that good training you're doing, even though it's a great training program, even though it's designed to get you where you need to be, is not going to work. And then you go, why is this training program not working? I am doing all the right things. How come this food plan isn't working? I've got my macros worked out. The eating plan worked last year. It worked last month. Why isn't it working now? And I'm like, is your internal ecosystem the same as what it was last year? The same as what it was last month? Are there other variables at the moment that you're not coping with? And if the answer is yes, it means that your body is in an automatic sympathetic response. So you can run like Forrest Gump, you can sprinkle magic fairy dust on your head, you can be doing cartwheels down Ryrie Street, Geelong, and nothing's going to work. Okay? So sympathetic is the doing. How many moments throughout your day do you catch yourself in the being? In the being, in just the, and when you're in the being, what is your experience in the being? Are you feeling anxious, agitated? Are you feeling completely relaxed? Do you feel so tired but wired? Does it feel uncomfortable to be in that space? So now that you have an understanding of the central nervous system and the two parts of it, one of the things I'd like you ladies to do this week, I'm going to go into more detail in a minute, but one of the things I'd like you to do this week is I'd like you to actually catch all the moments of restoration and relaxation that you actually do give yourself. Don't incorporate it. Don't do any more or any less. But at the end of every day, I want you to go on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, I did a lot of restoration, whatever that is for you. It might be 3 or 4 things, could be one thing, what have you. 10 out of 10, I did a really good job, and I could feel the feelings of feeling relaxed and feeling restored and having full vitality and energy and peace and calm and tranquility and just feeling like my body is where it needs to be. 10 out of 10 is amazing. 1 out of 10 is completely shit house. Okay? I want you to grade yourself and just observe where you're at. And at the end of that week, I want you to create the mean. So you're going to add all the numbers up, divide it by 7, and then work out what total score you got out of 70. Okay? Anything that is, like if you got 60 out of 70, that's pretty good. Your body's going to make some changes. If you got 50 out of 70, the changes will be slow but inconsistent. And anything below that, you're wasting your time until you address a balance between your parasympathetic and your sympathetic. Because when you're training, and I'm giving you your training programs, and this is what some of you will notice this, that I've just said to you, you're like, oh, what's my training program for next week? Or what's my training program for next month? Or, how many training sessions do I have to do this week? And I'm like, none. It's because in your check-in, your stress levels are through the roof. You haven't been able to do the things that you have said you were going to do, or follow direction, which means if I add more training or get you to comply to training on that, are you actually going to get results? Or am I just doing it because that's what every other coach does? So you might find me saying, hey, you know what? I need you to pull it right back this week. It's counterproductive. I'd love to be able to give you 4 sessions, 5 sessions, 6 sessions, but you're not going to be able to sustain it, do it consistently, repair, recover, and restore, because it's clearly now, mentally, it's not programmed into you to be parasympathetic. One of the best times that we're parasympathetic is at nighttime when we're asleep. And most of you that have come to me from the start are actually saying that you're not sleeping properly. That you're waking up 2 to 3 times through the night, sometimes cravings, sometimes you can't get to sleep, you've got night sweats, all things are happening. Now, there may be some hormonal shifts related to that, but a lot of the time, it's because we're in sympathetic mode and our body has become state addicted. It has become addicted to the drug adrenaline or the drug cortisol. So we've got to change energy systems, right, and go from being, in chronic cortisol and adrenaline into parasympathetic, which is serotonin and dopamine. And one of the number one areas of the body that produces serotonin and dopamine, apart from your adrenals, this is where it's stored up here, it's stored in the adrenals, is in your gut. So if your gut health is shit house because you're eating inflammatory foods, or you're constantly in the go-go all the time, your digestive system is like the epicenter of all stress absorption in the body. So if that is not optimized, you're not going to be able to produce serotonin and dopamine, and then you're on that vicious cycle again. Does that make sense to everyone out there? So how do we do this? How do we restore? Well, I'm just going to rub all this off right now. When people say what's more important, restoration, recovery, or active work? If you had asked me 5 years ago, I would have said active work. Just get off your ass, get off the sofa, move your ass and move, right? Now, we are in a world that is highly stimulated. So we are mentally stimulated, we are emotionally stimulated, we are spiritually stimulated, we are hormonally stimulated with the wrong foods, we are nutritionally disabled by the lack of quality of density in the foods that we either choose to eat or are available, and we are, and we are physically stimulated because, like I said, we're in the doing as opposed to the being. So right here, you've got being, and then you've got doing. Here's your second activity. I want you to write a list of all the beings, All the times when you've just been. That means being in the moment, being in the stillness, being in what you were doing, whether it's a person, a place, a thing, arts and crafts, whatever it is. Over the last 6 months, how much being have you been doing? Sleeping, being. You're not really doing, you're just sleeping. And then on this side, how much doing have you been doing? Now, I'm not talking about being productive. I'm just talking about being busy. Doing so much, but really not getting anywhere. Focusing more on quantity as opposed to quality and intensity. You know, it's really interesting. You know, everyone that's on here right now knows my story and knows that over the last 12 months, it has been an absolute roller coaster right up until yesterday when Kai came home from hospital. And so I've been hot in the doing. Okay. There's been lots and lots and lots of doing. Now, if this was any other year, in terms of my training, I would have still been trying to push through 6 days a week of training, 20,000 steps a day, and trying to get results at the same time while managing life. And I could have done it. And I did it when Kai was in hospital, but the results that I got with my body weren't great. Like, they were there and I still looked good, but I didn't really feel great. And this time round, I actually feel really good. I train 2 days a week with my coach, Tom, and best mate. And then I train 2 days a week with me. And I'm probably sitting on about 10,000 steps. Now, this is someone who's been training for 23 years that is an elite athlete that is going through a pro card next year. Anyone else that is in that category, they'd be training 8 hours a day. They'd be living, breathing, walking, talking, and shitting that stuff, right? And they'll be completely disassociating and disrespecting and not even bringing into the equation relaxation and restoration. The older we get, our bodies just don't recover. Oh, thanks, darling. Our bodies just don't recover the way that they used to. You know, from one weight training session, one quality weight training session, 4 exercise, maximum weights, you're looking, anyone over the age of 35, you're looking at least 2 days recovery from that, if it's done properly. You know, if you're looking to, you know, create the fountain of youth, you know, to look young, you know, and to feel young and to have your joints moving and to be able to bounce out of bed in the day and keep up with your kids and stamina. You can't do that constantly in sympathetic, right? You need to be in the being as opposed to the doing. So the way that I work it is for every one session, you know, and I classify myself, even though I'm 39 and a half, I classify myself as a 40-year-old, right? So as a 40-year-old, and even though I've been doing this my whole life, you know, like more than half my life, you know, I know that I need to give myself, for every one training session, one physical restoration, but also one mental restoration. There's 5 types of restoration. Mental, 5 elements of health, right? Mental, emotional, spiritual, nutritional, physical. R&R. The older you get, it's more of the being and less of the doing to look better. Now, some of you have been I've been coaching for like 10 years on and off. So we've gone through lots of life changes over that time. And what I've recognized is at this point in time in my life, I actually need 2 types of restoration. For one, just physical training. And that's not including being a mum, being a businesswoman, and, you know, just being a lady of the house, having to do the washing and vacuum the floors, like what I was doing 5 minutes before I got on the phone to everyone today. Do you understand that? So if you can't even take care of your restoration without the training, then Your training in the doing, your training program that I'm giving you is going to be counterproductive. It's like when I say to my clients that are starting out, like when I say to you ladies, when you're starting out on the detox that you have for 7 days, and like, why aren't I training? I say, because it's a fucking detox. Is training detoxing? No. It's creating toxins in the body, right? And I'm like, the first step is just walk 10,000 steps a day, because you know what? That's what the human body is made to do, to move 10,000 steps a day, okay? That's it. If you can't even do that, then the training side of things are not going to give you more bang for your buck out of that, because you can't even address the foundational levels first. Well, the same goes to self-care. If you're not even addressing your parasympathetic, the PS, if you're not addressing that, but then you want to go straight into training, you're not going to be able to have the longevity. It's not going to be sustainable or scalable or maintainable for you, because eventually your central nervous system or your sympathetic nervous system is going to shit itself, because it's kind of like laying the slab but not letting it set and then going straight into putting the framework up. Do you get that now? I think, Nick, maybe you might understand that as well, because you've been going through that a lot yourself. You've mentioned that, you work long hours, and then all you're prioritizing when you're getting home is, sleep. And you know what? Big tick to Nick, because she's been with me since, I think, 2013. We've been on and off for. And interestingly enough, sleep is the number one thing in the being side of things. If you're not getting good quality sleep, right, then at the end of the day, nothing else is going to work. That is the best time to be in parasympathetic. In fact, the hours of 10 till 2 a.m. in the morning are your biggest restorative phase, PS, parasympathetic, of your body. 10 till 2. That's where you do all the calorie burning, all the repairing of your organelles, all the getting rid of the toxins, all the processing of the food and the waste that you've had throughout the day. All of that happens between 10 and 2. Now, if you're running around like Jack Rabbit, right, doing a million and 10 things at once, that's 4 hours gives you like 80% of your recovery for the next day. And if that's not being a priority for you, guess what's going to happen? You're not going to be able to repair and do the doing at the best of your capabilities and be able to transform your body the way that you need to. So at a baseline level, sleep and nutrition and simplicity. Before you even think about the training side of things, get good quality sleep. Next week, we're going to talk about how to get good quality sleep. Okay? Nutrition, we've talked about that. Okay? It's about we talked about that last week and what we're looking at doing. Because most of you, when you first came to me, were actually not even in an optimized state when it comes to food, and still aren't, and we're working towards that. Your body's starving. That's sympathetic. So your body's either not absorbing the food or not getting it into the system, or not. You've just trained it not to be able to assimilate all those calories and food. So the body's just going to get to midnight. I'm fucking hungry. I need to eat, right? And so it's not going to be able to sleep. And you're going to disrupt that being cycle, the 10 till 2 that we were talking about, okay? And simplicity. Simplify your life. We talked about the delegate, deleting, and dealing. Step 3 of the behavior change model. Keep life simple, okay? If it's not going to impact your immediate month in a positive way, you need to delete it. You need to make the choice to delete it, because then what happens is everything else that is important to you isn't going to work because of that one thing that you're holding on to, or those 2 things that you're holding on to that don't fall into your simplicity basket. Does that make sense? Yeah? The more your bucket is full, the more restoration you need, right? So if you are mentally exerted, emotionally exerted, spiritually exerted, nutritionally and hormonally kaput, and physically just like dead to the world. Do you think if I give you a training program with 4 sessions per week, you're going to get the best out of that and do it sustainable and be sustainable in that and get the results? The body's smarter than your ego, and the body's going to tell you to go forth and multiply. Simple as that. So the priority is going from being exerted to being optimized, and that is your priority as a baseline when it comes to health. Hey Maria. So mentally, what we can do: delegate, delete, and deal. Triple D's. That's how you go from the doing into the being. Okay? Emotionally, how do we go from doing into being? When you're in doing, constantly doing, do you think you're actually embodied? Do you think you're actually, most of you are in the feeling, or are in this robot mode? I'm hat mode, this is my hat mode, I'm in mum mode, I'm in wifey mode, I'm in working mode, I'm in athlete mode, I'm in anything fucking goes mode because I don't even know who I am anymore. I'm so confused. So emotional exertion, when you're emotionally exerted, it's actually because you're disembodied. It's actually because you're not expressing your emotions. And when you're in the being, you're allowing yourself to experience emotions. And if anyone's experienced traumas or high levels of emotional stress or mental stress, breakdowns, deaths of the family, health-related things, other traumas, what have you, the last thing you want to do is feel. So what happens is a lot of you go into the doing. Not all, a lot of you, but a lot of you do go into the doing and shut this off. And then what happens is you hold those emotions in your receptors, you hold them in your body. And what do you think happens to that cortisol and the adrenaline that are sitting on top of your kidneys again? What's happening? It's like, here's your emotions. Here's the big bag of emotions right down here. Okay, I'm just going to turn that around. So here's your emotions down here, the big bag of emotions: pain, fear, guilt, hurt, anxiety, all the rest of it. It's all bubbling up. It's, there's the top of the bag and the shit starting to come out of the bag. Okay? And then as soon as that shit starts coming out of the bag and it can't hold it in there anymore, guess what happens? Cortisol and stress get triggered. So it sends a trigger message to your adrenals to go, okay, out it goes. Out goes the cortisol, out goes the adrenaline, because there's shit that hasn't been addressed. And the reason why the body does that is to try and signal you to start paying attention to what's actually happening in the body. So always, when you're in the when you're looking for emotional restoration, it's actually about expressing, recognizing, and becoming embodied, and that allows you to be in the being. Things like your yoga and your meditation can definitely help with that as well, and just stillness and just doing nothing. Sometimes you could just be like staring out into space, and it's okay to do that. There needs to be space for space. Okay, if you've got $100 in your bank account, $1,000 in your bank account, 5 cents in your bank account, it would be a dumb idea to spend every single last cent that you've got before your next payday. But we live our lives like that, week by week. And then as a result, the way that we do life is the way that we do body. And we're constantly deprived of emotional expression, which takes us out of being. It takes us out of being, doesn't it? And then we go back to this vicious cycle over here, and we know what happens when cortisol and adrenaline is running through your body. It just shuts the shop on everything. It's honestly like stage 4 COVID. It really is, because nothing works, and you can still be doing all the right things, but you're just not getting, the bang for your buck out of it. Spiritually is where we're finding ourselves in a position of not being in our honor. And being in our honor, I mean by being our values. Why? Because we're in the doing. We're doing what everyone wants us to do, or what we've signed up to do, or what we're habitually programmed to do. And even though we know what our core values are, we're not being in the honor of them. We're not sitting in them. We're not giving them a chance to express themselves and to work. And guess what? You can know what your values are. You can do the activity. We can do all those things. But if you don't put them into place and don't practice being in them, you've got a 100% chance of failing. 100% chance. So prioritizing restoration from a baseline level means that every single day you're doing one thing in each of these areas for restoration. Nutritionally, what are you doing each day to fuel your body? It could be like, hey, you know what? I know that my morning ritual is I will always have my super greens every morning. It's my one thing that I do every single day that I know that I can keep on top of. Now, if you're down the bottom of the barrel, and you have been for a while, one thing in each of these areas probably ain't going to cut it, and you're probably not going to be where you want to be in 1 week. You're probably going to have to do it for quite a significant amount of time. It might take 3 months to just build that level up of general good health and general parasympathetic and being before you then can take on the training and the exercise and feel good about doing it. And know there'll be a thing inside of you that goes, yes, I can do this consistently because I've got all these T's crossed and dots, dotted, I's dotted. And I know I'm going to be able to do my health and fitness program and make it sustainable and scalable over time. Does that make sense? Physical restoration. Physical restoration could be your Epsom salt bath. It could be, seeing a therapist, which for a lot of us that are in the Melbourne area, especially can be quite hard right now. Before COVID kicked in, I went and brought one of those little massage chairs. Oh, best thing ever. And I'm on it religiously, every second day for 10 minutes. Okay. Now, I know it's not as good as getting a proper massage from a massage therapist, but sometimes you have to improvise a little bit and focus on what you can do in the being, not what you can't do. And something in the being is better than nothing, even 30 seconds. You know what? The simplest thing to activate your parasympathetic is, even though your mind might be going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, the simplest thing is just to close your eyes for 1 minute. Because while your eyes are open, your eyes are being stimulated. Your eyes are scanning everything that is around you. Yeah? So when you close your eyes, it's not scanning. So just doing that, even a few moments, you're sitting in your car before you go to get your groceries or pick up the kids from school or cook dinner or whatever, go about your business. If you're doing that a few times a day, even for a minute, it's something, and it gets you in the habit. This is the whole idea, getting you in the habit on focusing on relaxation and restoration, because if you don't, it has a detrimental effect. Okay? This is what happens for most of us. If we are not in if we don't prioritize being in rest or relaxation, in parasympathetic, our bodies will age at an exponential rate. Okay? Last September, I went to 20-year high school reunion. Can't believe it. I think maybe it might have been my 21st year of high school reunion. And, I was never the popular one at school. I was like the female version of Nick Giannopoulos. It's a wild girl. So I was never popular. I was probably not the prettiest. I was a little bit on the tubby side because my nonna fed me very well. And I ended up going to this high school reunion, and I was just floored at what I saw. All the popular girls and all the popular guys and the ones I had the crush on at school, they were all there. And it was so sad for me because I didn't recognize 90% of them. I didn't recognize why. I'm not necessarily talking about the way that they physically looked, but they had aged. They did not look age appropriate. Okay? They were like 50, they looked like they were 50 years old, some of them. You know, now I'm no spring chicken. I don't look like a 21-year-old. But I look good for my age. And that's because the best form of skincare and the best form of anything is the food that we put into our body, but how we manage our stress as well. The lifestyle that we choose to live. And one of the quickest ways to age is to stress. Or stress. Why? Because stress is cortisol and adrenaline, lactic acid, uric acid, and that gets transferred through the body and it breaks shit down. It's acid. That's what it is. Breaking the body down. And in high levels, what do you think's going to happen? Have you ever seen someone, maybe a friend or a family member, and you know, you see them, maybe you don't see them as often, and maybe you went back and there was a family reunion or an encounter where you saw them down the street, or you just caught up for dinner, and you looked at the person and you go, oh my gosh, they look like they've aged 10 years. Hey Lise, they look like they've aged 10 years in 12 months. And it might just be that they've gone through a really crap time in their life. Maybe we've experienced that. I know I have. I know times where I've been that stressed, you know, that I didn't even think I was stressed because I had no awareness. I was completely oblivious to it. And the only time where actually it was a bit of a wake-up call for me was when I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh, shit. And my skin was pale. I was breaking out. I had dark circles under my eyes. My hair was falling out. And there was all signs my body was saying, we're not happy with the way things are right now, even though I was eating well. I wasn't coping and managing and addressing my stress because I was in the doing, in the surviving, and not in the being. You want to get the best out of your food. You want to get the best out of your training. You want to look at addressing mental, emotional, spiritual, nutritional, and physical restorative habits on a daily basis as part of your lifestyle. Non-negotiable. If you are and then once you can do that non-negotiably, you can do that on a daily basis. You're giving yourself the gift of that every single day. Then we can start looking at the doing, a little bit more of the doing, and go, okay, cool, I've built this baseline foundation. Now I'm going to get the most out of my training. I had this one person I was working with, and we spent, we were probably in the change phase, and we were doing like 5 days a week training. And then in that last week, we just upped it and did 6 days a week training. And the reason why we did that extra day was we got to that 3-week mark and we just weren't quite, the body wasn't really looking the way it needed to. Like, it was a bit watery, a bit flat. She's a bit tired. She was all right. Like, she was happy and she was like still herself. But I'm like, but the body's not dry and crisp, and you know, your performance has dropped off a little bit, and you know. And so anyway, long story short, I'm like, okay, let's up it. Let's do one extra session. Her body at the end of that week with that extra session in looked worse than what it did before she entered the change phase at 4 weeks. Now, after that 4-week period, what do? We go straight back to lifestyle management. And in the first week, she dropped like another 2 kilos of just fluid and stress that was in the body. And her body became hungrier. She became hungrier. She ate more food. So she became more optimized because the body, that was her tipping point before her body goes, too much, time to come off this change phase, time to go back into restoration, back into lifestyle management. But what happens with most of us is that we keep fucking going, don't we? We're like, oh yeah, suck it up, princess. Just, you know, have a big glass of fresh air if you're hungry. You know, doesn't matter what time it is, go out there and get those steps done. There's complete disassociation with what you're doing. There's complete disassociation with the work that you're doing and with your body. You're not even embodied anymore. So, you know, we want to get into a position where, you know, we're getting the best out of our training and we're looking the way that we want to look and we're performing the way that we want to look and we want to stop all these cravings and drinking and all that. Well, we've got to get the fucking foundations right first, ladies. right? You've got to get that baseline right when it comes to relaxation and restoration, and knowing how to train the parasympathetic as much as we've trained the sympathetic, right? So the sympathetic is the doing. You've trained that like you train a muscle. You've trained that central. It's like a freeway and a highway. The freeway is like 110 kilometers an hour, and then the highway switches between 80 kilometers and 100 kilometers. So the freeway is like the freight train, and it's just going and going and going. And you've trained that, and you've trained it so well because you're constantly on the go and you're doing great, awesome. You can handle it. Genetics will take you so far with that, and that's awesome. And it's great that you can do that. But what happens is then you get so far away, you've left your parasympathetic and the being down here, and you're up there now with the doings. There's such a gap. There's an unbalance on the scale. So we need to go back and go, right, we need to do some restoration, recovery, and relaxation over here so that the two are working like this, as opposed to like all and then nothing, all and then crashing. Because what happens is that's what causes the most amount of stress in the body, is not when you just going, stretching yourself, it's in that point where you drop, in the point where you crash and the body crashes. That is the biggest amount of stress on the body, at that point right there. Because it's a shock to the system. Because you've pushed it that far and that hard, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, nutritionally, that it's literally it's all functions have stopped. You're not even in survival anymore. For a period of that drop, you're dead. Nothing's working, nothing's growing, nothing's repairing, nothing's happening. You're immobilized. So what we want to do is start practicing, and making it in the forefront, conscious forefront, reprogramming of our mind, that we're doing something every day to mentally, emotionally, spiritually, nutritionally, and physically restore ourselves. And if that comes at the expense of your training session, guess what? So be it. Give it a chance to work. Because if you don't, like I said before, you're going to have a 100% chance of it failing. We need to train our body to run on serotonin, dopamine, glycogen, so it's actually utilizing the food that we're eating and not off a stress chemical hormone, because that is chronic to the body and that causes disease. When you're in a chronic stressful state with cortisol and adrenaline, it's mutating your DNA, it's mutating your cells. And when you have mutation of those on a cellular level, apart from it getting passed on to your offspring, it changes your molecular level, neuroplasticity at its best. There's no coming back from that when you've done that damage for that long and not addressed it. And people say there are, and I'm like, yeah, you can improve, but there's no coming back to the way that you were before. I remember in 2006, when I did my first bodybuilding competition, I literally ate egg whites for 4 weeks. No word of a lie, nothing else. Nothing else. Egg whites, because I was told I was too fat. It fucked my digestive system so royally. I got lean, I won the world title and everything, but I wasn't proud of the fact of how I got there to win it, right? My digestive system from that point in 2006 has never been the same. I never had any issues before that, right? Never had any issues at all. And then after that time, like, gut health for me is a constant thing I'm on all the time. Hey, Janet, I have to focus. It has to be a priority for me, because if I don't, it's like that mutation, right? That mutation that occurred back in 2006. The body's like, well, okay, cool. Well, that's mutated now. You've damaged that cell, so it's never going to repair the way it needs to again. And the other thing was, I started suffering. No worries, Tina. One of my things that I started suffering from was anxiety and depression as well, and eating disorders. Like, no word of a lie. Back then, I remember going to see a lady who runs a certain magazine, and she was at that time quite new in, like, in the bodybuilding world, and she was running a seminar. And she's like, well, you know, what I do to kind of like get through the, you know, cravings for sugars and everything like that, because she'd like fluctuate 30, 40 kilos in a comp. No word of a lie. You know, she'd completely blow out. It's like, just to get through comp, I would just like eat the food and then I would spit it out. Like, what? And I'm like, does that work? Me, ignorant me, back in 2006. So I did that. And for 6 months, I had the worst eating mental disorder you could possibly think of. I remember I used to go to, I was Berkeley Square in Brunswick. Yeah, it was full on. And I used to go to the confectionery aisle, right? I used to go to the confectionery aisle. And down the confectionery aisle, they had like your 2 for $7 Cadbury chocolates. So it was a bit cheaper back in those days. It was like 2 for $5 or 40% off or whatever it might be. And I would fill the trolley. I would fill the trolley with Cadbury chocolates. And I would fill the trolley with the pastries from the bakery area. And then I'd go, oh, I'd like something savoury to wash that down with. And I'd you can relate, Janet? All right. So the reason why I know this is because I was that person, right? And then I'd go, you know, and I was still small and skinny at the time. I was not overweight or big, but I had this horrible eating disorder. And then I would go home, or in my car in between, you know, clients. And I would get a bucket with a plastic bag and I would eat the food and I would spit it out into the bucket. Crazy, right? But that was because I was told it's okay to do that in comp. And I actually believed it because I was so I was in the doing and not in the being. I couldn't even fucking think for myself anymore. And I was so desperate to get that I fucked that up by mutating my DNA, my cells. And for someone that, you know, in a few years back, I went and got a test. It's called the MTHFR gene. And I don't know if anyone knows about the MTHFR gene, but I like to call it the motherfucker gene. There's 2 variants of the motherfucker gene. There's the homogeneous and the heterogeneous. And what this gene does, if it's mutated, okay, that means it is expressed through poor lifestyle choices, okay? Foods, drugs, alcohol, stress, overworking, undersleeping, all that stuff. You're welcome, Amy. Then what happens is it opens up all this cellular mutation of mental health, from bipolar to schizophrenia to anxiety to manic depressive. People that have the motherfucker gene or the MTHFR gene are more prone to stroke. Why? Because stroke is autoimmune based, and someone that has the motherfucker gene is generally an A-type personality, always needs to be in control. They're on the go-go all the time. They are sympathetic. They are highly trained sympathetic beings that aren't in the being, that are in the doing. They're also extremely, prone to things like heart disease. They don't methylate folic acid, iron, magnesium, minerals at all, so they constantly need to keep on top of them. Okay, the people that have those that mutation, that motherfucker gene, right? And then, like I mentioned to you before, there's 2 variants, right? So we have the homogeneous, the heterogeneous. So the homogeneous means, it's not that you're homophobic or anything like that, or you're a homo. It means that you only got that gene from one of your parents. Homogeneous. Heterogeneous is where you got those, where you got that gene from both your parents. Both your parents have got the motherfucker gene, and then you've got a 100% chance of getting that motherfucker gene. But what makes it more intense is that if both parents have it, you have a 70% chance of that being mutated. 70% chance of that being mutated throughout your life. So you can have like the best lifestyle. You can be eating really well, training really well, doing all that, and have that gene activated. And you still have a 70% chance of it being mutated. Doing all the right things. I have that gene. right? So what stimulates that more so is the aging process. So the more on top that you keep about the anti-aging and keeping your body young, the less likely that's going to mutate. Now, have I had that mutated throughout my life? Abso-fucking-lutely. Back in 2006, right? Have I suffered from mental health? Absolutely. But it's not as bad as what it would be if I didn't choose to have and adopt the 5 pillars of health, both in the doing and in the being. I'd have a 100% chance. I'd be in a straitjacket, locked up in some crazy ass hospital right now, or on meds, heavily medicated. Does that make sense to everyone? Does everyone understand where I'm coming from now? The importance of it? So does this mean that we all need to sell up and, live the kumbaya lifestyle? No, it doesn't. It just means that having a healthy lifestyle means prioritizing the parasympathetic as much as we do the sympathetic, and in our older age, more so parasympathetic, because our bodies are not going to be able to sustain sympathetic. So one of the things I make sure I do each day is make sure I'm doing something restorative here in each of those areas: mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, and nutritional. That's 25 minutes a day. There's 24 hours in a day. And that's not including sleep. Okay? Just 5 things. The other thing is every month I do myself a being and a doing list. And I look at how much I've been doing and how little I've been being, if that makes sense. And then that allows me to set up my next month in terms of my training. So what do I set up first? I will set up my being month first in terms of, when I'm working with my coach, when I'm addressing stuff with Tom, I'm like, right, he'll say, how many times do you want to train this month? And even though my ego wants to say 6, I know that based upon last month, in order for me to get improvements with my physical body and my mental body and what have you, Sven, I love it, we need to focus on the being. I need to make restoration a priority. Unfortunately, I need to restore before my training session with you, Tom. I know I need to physically restore after my training session with you. I know I've got Kai in and out of hospital. I know I'm going through, a divorce settlement at the moment, which is crazy, anyone who's gone through a divorce. And so if I don't address those things, they're going to fire off when I want to go to sleep at night, because I'm going to be thinking about them, because I've been too busy in the doing. I need to make time to empty out during the day. Mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, it's just going to be a priority. And since doing that, wow, I'm sleeping better. My body's absorbing the food that I'm eating. I'm actually quite surprised at the volume that I can consume, which usually when I'm stressed I can't, or if I try and eat food when I'm really stressed, I just get bloated and constipated, even if it's good food, right? My training, I had a session with Tom today. PBs have gone through the roof again. And he goes, I don't know how you do it. I said, because I'm prioritizing being. I'm keeping my life simple. I've got like 49 women waiting to do this program. Now, 49 women at 3 hours each is hundreds of hours of work just to set them up. Now, financially, that's great. That's going to be awesome for me. But that's going to put me into a whole lot of doing. And at what expense? Does everyone understand that? I wanted to share that with you today because, especially over the last 6 months, a lot of the ladies that I've been working with on here, you haven't prioritized it. You haven't made it important. And you haven't given it the same respect and intensity and focus and commitment as what you do everything else. What you need to understand is the parasympathetic is the feminine energy in us. If we don't respect the feminine energy, she's going to fuck us up. Because guess what? The female always wins. True? She might not win today. She might not win tomorrow. But she always wins in the end. Does that make sense? Awesome. So, ladies, on that note, let's rehash. We're going to do the homework, which is the being and the doing. Okay, I want you to look over this last. It's the start of spring. It's like the second. It's the 2nd of September now. I want you to reflect on the last month that you've just had. I want you to do this list. How much have you been doing? Hopefully you all have enough paper to write your doing list down. And how much have you been being? I want you to go into the start of every week with 5 focal points every day on how you're going to rest and restore for that day. And make it a priority. Make it a priority at the expense of your fucking steps per day. Make it a priority at the expense of how long you train for every day. Prioritize it over the dirty washing that's sitting in the laundry. Fuck the dirty washing. Delegate it. Get someone else to do it. Because no one's going to look after you the way that you look after you. Because no one gives a shit. People are too busy in their own heads, dealing with their own bag of bullshit. You know, you got to take the bull by the reins and make it a priority. And imagine that if you knew how good you could look and feel, prioritizing your parasympathetic nervous system, and understand how everything that you want is in that, and that the active work really is only optimized by using quality. That's when you can be running on adrenaline and cortisol. Short spurts of active work and then large spurts of restoration and recovery. And the older we get, it's more of that. I'm better now at 40 than what I was at 20 when I used to train. And I'm doing less now than what I was doing when I was 20. When I was 20, I was like 7 classes a day of bloody body pump and body attack and body funk and all the Les Mill programs because I taught them. And then I'd go off and do my training session, right? And then I'd go for a walk. And then I'd come back in the gym, you know, teach aqua aerobics to the geriatrics as well in there. And I couldn't, like, not be in the water with them. So I used to jump in the water with them and do it. So I was, like, training 8 hours a day. If I tried to do that now, I couldn't even do that for a day. I'd be floored for the month. Keeping yourself youthful and young requires you to have a trained parasympathetic nervous system. That means you need to make it a choice, like you did when you came to me, to get fit and strong and, you know, look lean and mean for summer. You need to make the parasympathetic nervous system part of that process, not the opposite of that process. That means you deny it or disrespect it. And this is what most people do when they start a journey. They completely forget restoration and recovery. So my suggestion, for every 1 training session that you have, do 2 restorative works. 2 forms of restoration. It could be stretching, it could be yoga, and then do something physical and then maybe do something mental. Okay? That kind of calms the mind down. Or, you know, one of the best things that I love to do after my training sessions is going to my sauna for 20 minutes and then I just go lie down on the bed for 10 minutes, 20 minutes. I feel amazing when I wake up. I feel like I've actually recovered more in that 40 minutes between the training, in between the sauna and the sleep than what I would have if I just ate a big bowl of fucking carbs, because I've got to carb up after training. All right? I eat afterwards because my body's relaxed. And then when I eat when I'm relaxed, guess what? It's going to upregulate my food. That's why some people can't eat right after training, is because they're so sympathetic. And your body's not, like, the blood and the juices are not going to the digestive system. They're at your limbs. They're in your muscles. They're away from your central nervous system. And sometimes you need to give yourself, a good 30 minutes to kind of calm your farm down a little bit with your body, and then eat. All right, ladies. Well, I'm going to leave you and love you on Hump Day. Hope you've all enjoyed that. If you would like to discuss or have any topics you'd like me to discuss next week, let me know. I hope this one's been informative for you, and we are definitely going to be making it a priority. Okay? Apart from that, ladies, I'm going to leave you and love you. I've got a little rug rat that wants to go outside now. He's been locked up in a hospital and in the house for the last 2 weeks. And yeah, if you've got any questions, just send me a message, and or anything you'd like me to discuss on next week's session, we'll do it. Okay? Love you, ladies. Mwah.